Tom, the question of angels and demons may seem silly to many people today. On the other hand, it populates tabloid magazines and television shows in all sorts of bizarre ways. And yet, to really ask the question, what things really exist, and if you believe in virtually any of the major religions today, there is talk about non-human, immaterial beings other than God. So as a professional philosopher of religion, how do you address this question in a serious way?
It seems to me to be perfectly plausible to believe that angels and demons exist. I mean, not perhaps with all of the cultural trappings that you were mentioning that we see in motion pictures and images of beings in long robes with wings on the back and so on. I mean, obviously that's simply pictures people have tried to use to flesh out what these beings might be like, beings who can't be seen, who don't actually have wings, and so on. But it seems to me to be perfectly plausible to think that it's not as if there would be nothing between human beings and God. And angels and demons, beings who are spiritual beings, beings who have something akin to a human soul, but not a physical body connected with it, it seems entirely reasonable to believe that God would create such things. There seems to be a lot of metaphysical distance, so to speak, between humans. If we think of humans in the traditional way as having a body and having a soul, there seems to be a large distance between us and God. Lots of possibilities for beings to create. Some of these might be other beings that have body and soul as well. Maybe there are some which are superior to humans in certain ways, intellectually, physically, all kinds of possibilities there. There doesn't appear to be any impossibility, though, in there being persons, free individuals, who don't have bodies, don't have physical bodies. And that, of course, is basically what an angel or a demon is. An angel is simply a non-physical person, a finite non-physical person who has, so to speak, decided for God. And a demon is simply a non-physical, finite person who has decided against God, who has rebelled against God. So it seems to me to be perfectly plausible to believe what the tradition tells us is true, that there are beings of that sort. I mean, if anything, it would be very surprising, I think, if God hadn't created anything lower than himself, but higher than us.
All right, let's explore it and see how far we can get. The tradition would believe that, to the degree there are angels and demons, they preceded us in terms of a timeline. So, would that have occurred like before the creation of the universe, or during the creation? During this time period, sometime before human beings came on Earth? Do we have any sense there? Is it God creating something as sort of an intermediary plan? Are there finite numbers of these things? I mean, I could ask a lot more questions, equally maybe silly, I don't know.
The easy answer is we don't know for much of that.
Right.
When did God create angels and demons? I mean, the natural way to take that is at what time did God create them? But a very traditional picture of time is that time is a measure of physical motion. Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about non-physical things, then speaking of time with regard to them might be sort of a category mistake, might be somewhat inappropriate. Maybe we have to think of a whole different dimension of time or something like that in order to think of angels and demons.
But we can make a statement that they are created. They didn't coexist with God from eternal times.
That's right. They would be creatures, they would be finite, they would be contingent, all of the things that we are and that God isn't.
Okay, so I mean, then we have to have, there was a moment, I won't use the word time, or an explanatory point in which these non-physical beings did not exist. Is that a fair statement or not?
I think it's fair to say that something like that is true. I mean, we don't know exactly how to speak of the moment here. Is it a temporal moment, something akin to a temporal moment, a logical moment? Their existence has to flow out of God's free decision to create them. So God's existence and that decision have to be, in some sense, prior to the existence of these spiritual beings. So in that sense, I think it's perfectly appropriate to think of them as coming, so to speak, after God's decision, or their existence depends upon that decision of God.
Okay, and so we've made some progress. I mean, we know that they have not existed eternally, but they are dependent upon God's decision and therefore explanatorily later, or logically later, or maybe even temporally later, we're not quite sure. And I would assume there's not an infinite number of them, so there's a finite number. I mean,
I suppose, but I really don't know.
Yeah, so it could be an infinite number, which is would be hard to grasp, but
it would be hard to grasp, and I think many people would be inclined to think that there would have to be a finite number, but I'm not sure if we have compelling reasons for believing that.
And the existence of these angels and demons in God's plan would have been known by God from before he created them. And in that plan, which tradition would say would be one plan, would have human sentient creatures as part of that plan, and these angelic or demonic creatures is also part of that plan.
That's right.
And is that it's obviously one plan, but are the two related in some way, or is it kind of two strands of?
Again, I mean, we're largely speculating there.
Sure,
I mean, the tradition suggests that there are some relations, at least, between the life of angels, let's say, and the life of humans here on earth. There are many biblical examples, of course, of God sending angels as his messengers to humans to inform them of something, remind them of something. There's a long tradition, at least within Catholicism, of guardian angels, God assigning angels to each individual to try to help them to develop spiritually and to come closer to God. And of course, there's also the long tradition of demons being connected with humans in a way which is much more harmful. That what they're trying to do is to get us to rebel against God in the same way that they have rebelled against God.
Now, the rebellion of demons was part of God's original plan that he knew when he chose the possible world to actualize?
Well, I would think it had to be part of his plan in the sense that God is omniscient, and omniscience includes middle knowledge, that is, knowledge of how any creature would freely react to any situation in which it might be placed. Any creature is going to include angels, the good angels as well as the bad angels, who we now call demons. So God created them free to accept him or reject him, and he knew full well how they were going to react. So it's not as if he was surprised by this. It was something he was willing to accept, something he was willing to permit for some good reason. Now, often we don't know what the good reason is, why God permits evil. But as Christians, we have this faith, we have this confidence that there is a good reason, that something was being achieved by permitting this kind of evil. That's true with regard to human evil, and it would have to be true with regard to the rebellion of the bad angels, the demons as well.
The one thing I like about that story, I don't mean story like fairy tale, but whatever it is that it's internally consistent. Because if you're going to have God providentially in control and knowing for certain, through middle knowledge, what this plan is going to be, and if demons are part of it and demons have rebelled, then God chose to actualize that world with whole knowledge of forethought.
That's right. Yeah.
What does that tell us about God?
Well, one thing I think it tells us is that he's willing to accept an awful lot of evil in the world. I mean, we know that from the human realm as well. The world in which he's created contains both an abundance of evil in terms of numbers and in terms of the horror of certain evils. But on the Christian story, it precedes us. The rebellion of the angels is a great evil as well. And God was willing to permit that. And it seems independently of the existence of humans. I mean, saying that is controversial as well, but it appears as if it's independent of our existence. So I think one thing that it tells us is that our good God is one who knows that this evil is going to occur if he creates certain creatures in certain situations, and is willing to accept that and sees that great good can come out of it.